I wore my Stephen King t-shirt today for this video and you can't even see it. Hi everyone, today is a very special day. It is none other than Stephen King, the king himself's birthday. It is the 21st of September. I wasn't going to make this video at all, and then I woke up this morning and I thought, what better day to refilm my Stephen King book collection video than on his birthday. So that's what we're doing today. I have been building my collection since May of this year. So it's very small, but it's very precious to me. I love Stephen King so much. I started out with The Shining, which I'll show you in a second, and my love just blossomed. My adoration for him has grown and grown over the past few months. I've been watching a lot of his talks in colleges, a lot of his speeches. I've just been listening to the man speak about life, books, reading, everything. And I adore him. He's one of my favorite authors. He's just one of my favorite people in general. And so I just want to do a little appreciation video and show you all of my little books that I have by him. Okay, so let's get right into it. So the very first Stephen King book that I ever read was The Shining. In The Shining, we're following the Torrance family. We have Jack Torrance, Wendy Torrance, and their son, Danny Torrance. Jack gets offered a job as the caretaker in the Overlook Hotel, which is in the middle of nowhere, and it's closing for the winter. They need someone to take care of it, keep everything running, keep everything going smoothly until they open again a few months later. So Jack and his family are about to be completely alone, completely isolated in this hotel, like I said, in the middle of nowhere in winter, until they open again for the new season. What I loved more than anything in this book was the way that he wrote his characters. Their journey that they take, the three of them, they all take completely different journeys, and it's written so well, and the pacing is fantastic that it is genuinely scary. You were watching our main character, Jack Torrance, go from being a troubled family man who genuinely really loves his family, wants to protect them, wants to do well for them. That's why he took this job. And you watch him slowly lose his mind as he lives longer and longer in this hotel. And it's just paced so well. Like, it was just spanned over such the perfect amount of time, and you can just see him slowly descending into madness, and it makes perfect sense, which is the problem that I had with the film, is that it kind of just jumped from him being a sane family man to all of a sudden, within a click of your finger, he's completely insane and he wants to kill everyone. And that just didn't sit well with me, and it kind of took away my enjoyment. My love for his writing stemmed from this book. When I was looking for where to start with Stephen King on Reddit, a lot of people said start with The Shining, so that's where I started. Now that I've read a few more of his books, I would definitely say that this is a perfect place to start. The way that he writes his characters, his writing style, you'll really get a feel for it with The Shining, so I would highly recommend it. You've all probably read it already. I mean, if you're watching this video and you like Stephen King, but I need to explain it anyway. So my next one is the sequel to The Shining. It is Dr. Sleep. I don't have any plot summary for you for this one yet because I have not read it yet, and I want to go into it completely blind. I kind of just want to see what I get out of it myself. One thing that I can tell you that I do know is that it is following one of the main characters from The Shining. Now they have their own story. So that's all I'll tell you, because that's all I can tell you, because that's all I know. The next one that I have is Misery. In Misery, we are following a man called Paul Sheldon. He is a famous author. He gets into an accident and he is saved by a woman on the side of the road called Annie Wilkes. She takes him to her house in order to restore him back to health, and she is his #1 fan. Annie Wilkes is probably the most unsettling, nauseating character I've ever experienced. She's disgusting. Misery personally didn't do a lot for me. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it. I thought it was extremely well written. I thought his characters were fantastic. Annie Wilkes is vile. It's extremely well done, so if the plot is something that interests you, I would highly recommend that you pick it up. Don't let my 3 out of 5 put you off. Really well written suspense thriller. I would recommend it if the plot seems interesting to you. I nearly knocked my coffee over with my knee. Carrying on with the Kathy Bates theme, my next book is Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. Dolores Claiborne is a housekeeper for this old woman. She's extremely rich and she's extremely heartless. One day this old woman is murdered, and who is instantly accused but Dolores Claiborne. So the book is basically Dolores Claiborne trying to prove her innocence with a lot of typical Stephen King twists thrown in. It genuinely sounds really interesting. I'm really excited for it, and I love that it is a female main character. I loved Carrie, so I'm really excited for this one. Okay, I went downstairs to have coffee with my mom, so hopefully the lighting hasn't changed too much. So my next book is The Talisman, which is by both Stephen King and Peter Straub. I have never read a book by Peter Straub, but I watched him in an interview before with Stephen King and a couple of other horror authors on a talk show, and I loved him. I really liked his personality. He seems like a really nice guy, so I'm really excited to read this. So The Talisman is about a young 12-year-old boy. His name is Jack Sawyer, and his mom is dying of cancer, and so he sets out on a journey in order to get a crystal called the Talisman that will heal her. I think Stephen King is amazing at writing kids. I think they're always so spot on and hilarious. I love all the kids in It, and I love Carrie in Carrie. I've read very few books where it's like two authors have worked on the project. I've read a couple, but not many. So I'm really excited to see how I find Peter Straub's writing for the very first time and how it gels with Stephen King's. Does it flow nicely or is it very choppy? I'd really love to read this in October. I'm kind of in the mood for it. We'll see. I need my tea. The next book is one that sounds probably the most interesting out of all of them to me anyway. It's The Dark Half. In The Dark Half, we are following a man called Tad Beaumont. He is a very successful author, and for years he's been writing under the pseudonym George Stark. Eventually people start to realize that they are not two different people. They are the one person coming from Tad Beaumont's mind. Tad Beaumont decides to have a mock burial to kill off George Stark because he's no longer going to write under that name. And what happens but George Stark comes to life from the grave with all of Tad Beaumont's worst, darkest traits. He is basically the dark half of Tad Beaumont come to life. I love horror that plays into people's minds and our intentions and how they can be twisted. The idea of your worst parts of yourself coming to life in the form of a person, no thanks. It sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm really, really excited for this one. Can I just say though, I didn't notice that these were two birds until like literally a week ago. I've had this book for a couple of months now. I thought it was like a mask that someone was wearing, that it looked like that. And then I realized it was two birds. And you're probably looking at this going, how the hell did you not see that? I have bad eyesight, okay? I never wear my glasses. My next book is one that I showed in a video a few weeks ago, and I'm just in love with this cover. I think it's one of the prettiest covers I own. It's not pretty, but it's like when it comes to Stephen King books, it's pretty. It's Cujo. I have not read this yet, but from the plot summary that I've heard, this is unlike anything I've ever read before. So I've talked about this one before. It is about a Saint Bernard dog. He is bitten by a bat, he becomes rabid, he becomes extremely aggravated, and he is set loose on the town of Castle Rock, Maine. This is the kind of book that would probably be perfect for Halloween. I would love to read a couple of Stephen King books next month because it's October. It is his time. He'll be in his prime. October is the perfect time to read Stephen King books. Whether you've read his works before or not, it is the perfect time to get into some King. So I want to read a couple of books of his next month. Will this be one of them? We shall see. So my next one is unfortunately one that I have read but really didn't like. It's definitely my least favorite Stephen King book so far. It is Mr. Mercedes, which is the first book in the Bill Hodges trilogy. Mr. Mercedes is about a retired detective called Bill Hodges. Bill Hodges is still tormenting himself to this day over a case that he never solved a few years ago when he was working. It was a case where a man was in a Mercedes and he drove into a crowd of people, killing multiple people intentionally. One day he gets a message from Mr. Mercedes basically teasing him for not solving the case and never finding out who he was. So because he's retired, he works from home and he builds up a little team and they try to hunt down Mr. Mercedes. I only have one reason why I really didn't like this. I didn't like the romance. I felt it was unnecessary. I do not go to Stephen King for romance. I understand that he was trying to do something different and it was a cute relationship, but I just really was not in the mood for it. I was in the mood for a thriller. I felt the relationship just kept getting in the way of the story. I just wasn't interested. It was like a huge plot point and I was just like, if I want romance, I'll go to Nicholas Sparks. That's a lie. I'd never go to him for romance. I think it was written really well. It's just, it took up way too much of the story for me. I would personally recommend that you watch the show rather than read the book. Traitor. Okay. My ass is sore. Okay. My next one is my favorite Stephen King book so far. So we've gone from least favorite to favorite. It. This is a big boy. This is a big, chunky, thick bitch. I'm sure you all know what this is about. We've all had the It and It Chapter 2 adaptations shoved down our throats the past few years. I don't really know how to describe this because on the surface it's about a clown, Pennywise, who is tormenting the children in the town of Derry, Maine. But it's so much more than that. To me, this book is really more than anything about friendship. It's about supporting your loved ones. It's about being there for each other. It's about finding out who you are. It's about finding your place in the world. It is one of my favorite books of all time. I give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Reason being, I did not like how everything wrapped up in the end. The answers that we were given to me personally didn't make any sense, and I think everyone else will agree with that as well. Poor Stephen King was on coke at the time, so can we really complain? Yeah. Next I have The Dead Zone, which is about a man called Johnny Smith, the most unoriginal name I've ever heard in my entire life. Johnny got into an extremely bad car accident, and because of this he was put into a coma. Years and years and years later, he wakes up from this coma and he has psychic powers. He has absolutely no idea what's going on around him. All he knows is that all of a sudden he has powers. This is another one that people really hype up in the Stephen King community. The plot to me kind of sounds like the beginning of The Walking Dead, when Rick Grimes wakes up from his coma and he has absolutely no idea what's going on and there's nobody to give him any answers and the whole world just seems really freaky. Obviously it doesn't sound like The Walking Dead with the psychic powers, but just kind of the whole waking up after a long period of time and having no idea what is wrong with you and where everyone is and what the hell is going on really sounded like The Walking Dead to me, so I really wanted to pick it up for that reason, to be honest. The next one that I have is a fantasy. And it is The Eyes of the Dragon. This one I don't know much about. The reason being, again, like with Dr. Sleep, I kind of just want to go into it a little bit blind. All I know is that there are dragons, there are princes, there are princesses, there are knights, there are castles. It just sounds like an absolute adventure. It sounds like a very traditional adventure story, but then again it is Stephen King, so it probably won't be. Before I decided to buy it, I read a little preview of it on, I think it was on Goodreads, because you can sometimes read the first chapter of a book on Goodreads, and I read the first few pages of this and I really liked the writing style and I really liked the idea of it, so I bought it, and that's that. So the next one is a novella collection, which you have seen on the channel before. It is Different Seasons. So Different Seasons contains 4 novellas. Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, The Breathing Method, Apt Pupil, and The Body. The Body is what the movie Stand By Me is based off of. I gave The Breathing Method a 3 out of 5 stars, and I gave Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption a 5 out of 5 stars. It is one of my favourite stories of all time. Writing wise, Stephen King is just at his best for me in Shawshank Redemption, in my opinion. I don't know why I keep doing southern accent. I hope nobody gets mad at me. I watched The Devil All the Time the other day, the new Netflix movie with Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Sebastian Stan, and Bill Skarsgård, and I just keep doing the southern accent. I keep walking around the house saying Robert's line, delusions, delusions, and I think my mom's ready to kick me out. I had started reading Apt Pupil and I couldn't finish it. It's one that I'm probably just going to DNF. I'm really not a fan. I was reading it last month and I just could not get into it. But I would love to read The Body soon. Stand By Me is one of my favourite films. If you like movies with extreme character development and growth, I would highly recommend that you watch Stand By Me if you haven't seen it yet. The movie is fantastic. I can't wait to read the story. That's Different Seasons. Why did I just do, that's disgusting. I've been wanting to read this next one for May, June, July, August, 5 months, and I have been so intimidated by it because it is an extremely long book. It'll be the longest book I've ever read. It is The Stand. I've been watching a lot of people do Stephen King tier list videos recently, and this is always in the very top tier. This is seen as Stephen King's masterpiece, and I think that's why I'm so intimidated by it, because Misery is also seen as one of his masterpieces and I wasn't crazy about it. I mentioned earlier The Walking Dead. It's one of my favourite shows of all time. I stopped watching it after season 8, but those first like 6 seasons for me were my favourite thing on the planet. I loved The Walking Dead for years, and this book follows an apocalypse. This book is probably not the best to read during the times of COVID, because we are following a man who escapes a biological testing facility and he sets off a domino effect of the flu that kills off 99% of the human race. Survivors are left to fend for themselves and to build a whole new world. A whole new world. Sorry. Some survivors are weaker than others and some are braver than others. And those brave others try to become the leaders and try to lead these people to safety. But I think it's going to go to their heads a little bit. The power. We'll probably have a few Negans in this book. I don't even know, is Walking Dead even set in the South? It is, isn't it? I have rewatched that show so many times and I can't even tell you where it's set. It's in the South. Yeah, because Coral. That's definitely Southern anyway. My next one is Desperation. I love this cover. This is definitely one of my favorites. This group of tourists are driving on the highway through Nevada. Texas? Is Nevada in Texas? Anyway, they're driving through Nevada and they are attacked by this evil spirit. and the whole book is them desperately trying to escape from this evil being that has taken them. That's what I know about it so far. It sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like an alien story, and so I'm excited to find out if it is in Texas or not. Next, I have a non-fiction book, and it is Dan's Macabre. My love for horror really stemmed from reading The Shining by Stephen King, so it only really started this year. And this book is his love letter to the horror genre. Horror podcasts, horror books, horror films, all of those kinds of things he has put in here into one book and described his favorites, his least favorites, what influenced him. This is one that I'm dying to read, but because I only got into horror this year, I have so much catching up to do. When it comes to films, authors, old folklore, I have so much stuff to catch up on before I read this, and I kind of want to know what he's talking about when I'm reading it. So I have a lot of films to watch, I have a lot of TV shows to watch, I have a lot of books to read before I finally crack this one open. This is going to take me a while. I'm not going to get to this for another couple of years, I'd say. Next, I have two novels in one. I have Carrie and the Tommyknockers. I don't think I ever showed this on my channel. I might have showed it in my first video, in my first Stephen King video. This is one of my favorite covers. I say that for every single one. It's just beautiful. Sissy Spacek, looking pretty, looking shocked, looking shooketh to the very core on the cover. I have read Carrie. I have not read the Tommyknockers yet, but the Tommyknockers is an alien story, and so, like I said, with Desperation, that is the kind of thing that I like, and so I'm dying to read that one. But I have read Carrie. I read it 2 months ago, and it is one of my favorite Stephen King books. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was so much fun, and I'm dying to reread it. Carrie is our main character. She's a young girl in high school, and she is being severely bullied. She's being tormented at school every single day, and then she goes home to her extremely religious mother, who just doesn't give her a break. So there's literally nowhere where she feels comfortable, and there's nobody for her to talk to. Whilst dealing with the bullying and her lunatic mother, she's also trying to deal with the fact that she has telekinetic powers, and she's trying to learn how to control them. This one girl in Carrie's class starts to feel really bad for everything that's happened to Carrie because of her and her friends, and so she asks her boyfriend Tommy, who is one of my favorite characters probably of all time, to take Carrie to the prom, because nobody else is going to ask her, and he'll be kind to her and he'll make sure she has a good night. So Tommy asks her to prom, and she says yes. She's delighted, and shit goes down. It's one of my favorite Stephen King books. It's one of my favorite books of the year. I had so much fun with it. It was really short and sweet. I read it in a couple of days, and I just fell in love with it. I love the film adaptation with Sissy Spacek from the 70s so much. It's one of my favorite films that I've watched this year. I'd never seen it before. So if you like the original film, I highly recommend that you read the book, because they are extremely similar. So chances are you will love it as much as I did. My next book that I have is On Writing, Memoir of the Craft by Stephen King. I've been dying to read this for months, and I keep putting it off. I am so excited to read this, but I'm also so nervous because so many people have hyped it up so much. He's just one of my favorite people. My channel name, King Dickens, is after him and Charles Dickens. I adore the man. And so I'm really excited to read about his life and his writing process. I've heard a lot of people say that it's not an obnoxious book. It's not a how-to. It's kind of just him sharing his experiences and what works for him and what may work for you and what may inspire you as a writer. I personally don't write. I used to write fan fictions when I was younger a few years ago, but I don't write them anymore. So I'm not reading this to get any writing tips. I'm just reading this to read about his life and his experiences. And I'm also, like I said, so interested in his writing style. So I'm really excited to see how he does it and how his mind works when he's coming up with those ideas. So this is one that I'm really excited and also really nervous to read, because I really want to love it as much as everybody else does, and my voice just cracked. So that is my Stephen King collection from May to September of this year so far. I'm very happy with my collection. There are a couple that I'm missing that I really want to get, like Pet Sematary and Christine, Bag of Bones. There's a few out there that I really want to get my hands on, but at the minute I have quite a few that I haven't read yet, so I'm going to stick to those. I think that's it. I'm currently reading Moby Dick. I'm filming a reading vlog on it. Whether it will go up or not, I don't know, but so far I'm happy with the content, so we'll see. As per usual, if you enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to see me talk about books in the future, please consider giving me a subscribe. Subscribing. Please consider subscribing. You don't have to. It's all G. We see each other. Anyway, bye, ye children of the corn.